top of the hour, and it's great to formally introduce everybody to the webinar. My name is Charlie, and I'm the features editor here at Call Center Helper. And today we're going to be looking at the topic of important considerations for call center leaders. And I have two excellent speakers to bring to you today. The first speaker is Victoria Hamilton from Orange Falcon Consulting. How are you doing, Victoria?
I'm really well, thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me along today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And just for everybody that's joining us now, could you give a little bit of background into your role within call centers?
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. I've been working in the field of customer experience and people experience for over 20 years now. I've worked for brands including HSBC, John Lewis and O2. I've had a blended background and experience in both leadership roles, so I'm used to leading large multi-site, multidiscipline operational teams. I can also marry that up with a background in change and transformation, having held roles such as head of change delivery at O2. So I've got a good mix and understanding of the challenges and pressures facing operational teams. I also understand how you find that sort of real blend in driving and delivering change and transformation and getting that buy-in across your teams. Last year, I left my role as contact center director with HSBC and stepped out on my own and set up Orange Falcon Consulting. I'm really excited to see how I can share that background and knowledge with other organizations and help them as they address their customer and people transformation programs.
Excellent. Yeah, lots of great experience, Victoria, and it's great to have your knowledge, as it's great to have our second speaker's knowledge also, who is Tim Kimber from Vonage. How are you doing today, Tim?
Excellent, Charlie. Thank you.
Great. And for everybody that's joining the webinar, could you just reintroduce yourself and a little bit about your role within Vonage?
Yeah, so I currently work in Vonage in product marketing, marketing what was the new voice media contact center solution, which Vonage bought at the back end of 2018. But prior to that, I have had a long history of setting up and running call and contact centers in mainly high-tech companies. Ran a big compact care center in Compact Computer back in the day, set that up from scratch, ended up being, sort of, I think, 80 to 100 people at its peak, and also ran quite a few telesales operations outsourced when I was working at Microsoft for many years, going back a while now. But more recently, I've been with various sort of contact center and tech communications companies doing a product marketing role. So spreading the word, hopefully in sort of layman's English, about how people can get the best out of contact centers and improve what they're doing today.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, two really great presentations for everybody watching today. So really looking forward to getting on and watching those. But just a couple of things to update everybody in the audience about first. As I said, there's lots of learnings to take away from today's webinar. So if you ever want to catch up afterwards on both the webinar recording and the slides, that'll be available later this afternoon from www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And also, if you're not already in our chat room, it would be really great if you could join in our discussion, and that is at cch.chat. If you open up another tab or your phone, it would be excellent. You can join us in there. But what I most like to do is have the chat room on one side of my screen so I can network with everybody in the audience, and also to keep an eye on the webinar and listen to all the great insights from our two presenters. Also, another benefit of being in the chat room is that you can download the speaker's slides, and you can also join the quiz, which will come to after Victoria's presentation, in which you'll have the chance to win a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates. So very, very much worth being in there. And also, we do have a second bottle of champagne or box of chocolates on offer. You can win that by putting in your hashtag questions for a question, hashtag tip for a tip, and we will come to our favorite at the end and give away that prize. But that's enough from me for now. I'd be very happy to pass over to Victoria, and I'll let you start sharing your presentation.
Okay, let me just get my screen up.
Yeah, it should be coming up there. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you all see that okay?
We can see the presenter view slides. So if you just go full screen, that would be excellent.
You just need to swap screens.
There we go.
Sorry, I'm having a few technical problems here.
No problem.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, we can see the slides. It's not on presenter view, but
Right.
see the slides at least.
No, it seems to.
Yeah, if you go to the top where it says display settings, there's an option that says swap presenter view.
Hang on, let me just undo this other screen and hopefully we'll get. Is that better? Can you see it now?
Just the slides, but you can. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. Finally,
go.
apologies about that. All our dry runs and it worked perfectly, and then
Yeah.
you always get these technical glitches. So we got there eventually. So thanks, Charlie, and thanks for the opportunity to join this session today and share some of my views on important considerations for contact centre leaders in 2021. I'm really motivated by businesses achieving that perfect combination of focus on customer experience and people experience. In my mind, I don't really think you can truly achieve one without focusing on the other. I think we all know happy people equals happy customers, but I also think that happy customers equal happy people too. So I'm really keen to share and outline what I think are the key considerations for contact centre leaders to address this year, a year which is already shaping up to be a pretty bumpy and interesting one if the first few weeks of January are anything to go by. I'd like to spend some time also looking at how contact centre leaders should lead effectively in 2021 to really drive that culture of collaboration, trust and engagement with their people, and particularly with the continued focus on home working and distributed working. So I think looking back a couple of weeks, I found it really interesting to hear the number of people that were counting down the opportunity to bid an enthusiastic farewell to 2020, almost as though all the challenges and uncertainty and volatility that we'd experienced throughout last year would magically disappear when we got to the 1st of January. But true to form, I think it's fair to say that instead of feeling like we'd got to the end of the race and reached the finish line, in some cases, I'm sure many people actually felt that we were very quickly catapulted back to the start line as we saw lockdown be reintroduced. We saw more controls, more restrictions, and my personal favourite, a return to homeschooling. So within the first few weeks of this year, we've definitely seen some repeat trends that obviously emerged from last year. But I think it's fair to say it's not all doom and gloom with obviously the mass vaccination programme on the horizon. There is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And I think there's also the benefit to really draw on the playbook from 2020 last year. So whilst we were all thrust into a situation that none of us had really anticipated, there were definitely some silver linings which emerged. We saw the opportunity to really stress test remote working, something that's been talked about by so many for so long, but really embraced at scale by so few. So it was really interesting to see how that really was quickly mobilised, particularly in the contact centre environment. We saw businesses and teams really demonstrate the art of the possible in terms of delivering change at pace and really showing an agility and an appetite to embrace change in a way that had never really previously been experienced or even imagined. And I think, you know, that's something we should all be looking to harness as we continue to move on to 2021. And businesses, customers and teams all learned to use and engage with new tools and tech, which allowed them to engage and collaborate really effectively, and did so very quickly. So whilst many of us might feel that we've gone straight back to the start line, I think in many ways we should be viewing this as the end of the beginning as opposed to the beginning. So all of that I think has some really important implications and considerations for both customers and people, and where customer service and contact centre leaders should really be looking to focus their efforts and investments as we move into the next year. So before I share my thoughts, I've designed a couple of polls for people to take part in today. So Charlie, if you could open up the first poll for the participants to consider, that would be fantastic. I'm really keen to get your views on your organisation's biggest customer priority. You can see I've shared some options on the screen here. You might be looking at channel development and expansion. You might be looking at investment and how to build empathy and rapport building skills, or it might be something completely different, in which case option 6 is the one to go for. But it would be great if you could also provide some commentary on what that is. So I'll just give you a couple of moments to reflect on that, and then we'll see what the responses share.
Yeah, excellent. I can see the results coming through thick and fast. So I'll just give everybody a couple more moments to put their answers in there before we go. Obviously, there's a lot of options to read through, and obviously, as the last option states there, if you could leave any other big priorities that you have in the chat room, that would be really interesting to see when we come back at the end of Victoria's presentation. But for now, I'll end the polling and share the results with everybody. And we can see that proactive customer service and issue resolution has come out top, which is very interesting. Channel development, expansion, and integration has 21% of the votes. Enhanced product and services, 16% of the votes. Investment into building empathy and rapport skills, 10%, perhaps a little lower than I would have expected, but a good distribution across the across all the answers, which is interesting to see. Is that kind of what you were expecting there, Victoria?
Yeah, I had a pretty open mind. I was conscious we had a lot of people registered for today, and they'll be coming from different backgrounds. We've already seen people are dialing in from all over the world today. So different geographies, different industry sectors, different businesses, I think all will have their different take, but it's good to see we've got a spread and some of those options resonate with people. So thank you for sharing your views and your thoughts on that. We have a second poll I'd also like to capture some input on, and this time it's looking at your organization's biggest employee priority as you move into 2021. So again, I've suggested some different options. There's also another option you can select from if none of those particularly resonate with you. So if you could launch that one, thank you, Charlie, that would be great. And we'll give you a few moments to complete that.
Yes, indeed. So I'll go through the options for everybody, and it is the question is, which is your organization's biggest employee priority? So health and well-being, team connectivity and collaboration, investment in tools and technology, investment in learning and development, diversity and inclusion, redesign of values and behaviors. Lots of options to choose from there. Again, also keep going back to the chat room, but if you have any others that you'd like to put in there, that'd be really great for us to see. Those results are coming through now, and I'll end the polling and share the results with everybody. Health and well-being has come up top. Investment in learning development is also quite high, as is team connectivity and collaboration. I suppose that kind of links to your point earlier, and on the new reality, Victoria. But is that what you expected to see again?
I definitely expected to see health and well-being really appear up here. I think that's been a real trend and theme that was already gathering momentum before last year, but became particularly pertinent and relevant last year. I think the important point here is that there's not really a right or wrong answer, but I think the key thing is that businesses and individuals within contact center teams really take that chance in that moment to pause and reflect and really intentionally consider what's different this year, how might we need to amend and adapt and adjust to be cognizant of these changing requirements from both a customer and a people perspective. So thank you people thank you everyone for taking the time to complete that. I will now just spend some time to share some of my thoughts and ideas on some of the key areas that contact center leaders should be focusing on. And I think it's fair to say there's a changing backdrop from a customer and people perspective. There's a tighter squeeze on budgets, and there's so many different options that you could consider. But my views are based on my conversations with different businesses across different sectors and just different industry insight and input. So hopefully you'll find that useful as we go through that today. So let me just, I'm not able to move on in my slides, Charlie, for some reason.
So I think if Victoria, if you just come in and out again, that should work. Either that or press the space bar, or often works for me.
It's just frozen.
Yeah. If I
there we go. There we go.
Yeah, we go.
A few technical glitches today. So yeah, so I've captured 6 key themes here that I thought would be useful just to run through with everyone. From my perspective, everything has to start with customers. So I think this is a real opportunity to relearn and understand your customer expectations, requirements, and outcomes. For customers, there's been changes and impacts to so many different facets of their lives, and what mattered this time last year may no longer be applicable. So it would be foolhardy to continue on a route based on previous expectations and understandings of what mattered to your customers. Customers have had health worries, they've had job worries, worries about financial security. They may even have lost loved ones through the recent pandemic. So it's really important to just reconnect with your customers, understand those vulnerabilities, establish how your teams are set up to support your customers, and also understand the feedback from your customers on the different products and services that your business is offering and how might they need to adapt in this new world that we all find ourselves living in. And I think that ties back to a point that was made earlier on, just around that opportunity to amplify that voice of the customer and share that into the wider business to see where there are opportunities to improve things for your customers. I think contact centres are in such a powerful position to really interpret that customer feedback, but also to share and translate that and make that relevant for the wider business. So really do take that time to listen and look at the so what, now what from a customer perspective. Operating model and channel optimization is also a key theme, regardless of industry sector, that many contact centres are looking at. I think the growth of digital has created a number of new opportunities in terms of how businesses support their customers across different channels. There was undoubtedly a massive explosion in the adoption of digital channels last year, but we should never understate the continued importance of the voice channel, particularly with that backdrop of customers facing times of volatility, uncertainty, and vulnerability, where they're really looking for that human-to-human contact, and they're really looking for contact centre agents to provide that empathy, support, and reassurance. So I know Tim's going to be sharing some insight later on in today's webinar, just to compare the usage across different channels. But for you and your organisation's perspective, really take that time to be clear on the role that each channel plays, how you best structure your team and your people to effectively support your customers. So that means looking at your customer surveys, your usage data, and really establishing the channels that best support your customers for the different interactions they may have with you. And I think that challenge is for businesses to find that real sweet spot between the human touch and automation. It's not either or. I think the two play a really complementary role. And importantly, the growth and explosion of digital channels has really created that opportunity and operational capacity within the front line to better invest in that human contact to deal with vulnerable customer situations and scenarios. So I think the key words I would draw out are ease and flexibility of support. No one size fits all. Digital investment is really closely linked to this. One word of caution from me on this front: I think it's really easy to get sucked into the me too mindset and mentality because a competitor has embraced a particular form of digital investment. It's therefore applicable for your business. But this is when it's so critical to really double down on the first point about understanding your customer expectations and really being clear on how investment in the digital space will directly impact and improve your customer experience, understanding what's important to your customers, and being really clear on how technology is going to better enable those outcomes. Employee health and well-being, that came out as a real point of priority and consideration with the attendees on today's webinar. This could almost be a discussion on its own. There's just so much that falls into this section. And it was gathering a lot of increased focus and momentum in terms of its understanding of the role it had to play in effective leadership prior to 2020. Really doubled down on that last year. And I see that trend really, really continuing. A number of key points I would draw out on this. Obviously, home working was really mobilised at pace last year. And I think in 2021, the emphasis moves from just the physical mobilisation of teams to work from home to actually really appreciating the longevity of this approach and the permanency of home working in your operating model. There's been so many learnings gained from this new style of working last year that that's something we continue to look at and see how that evolves and the role that has to play. And it's not just about having your people working from home, it's about equipping them with the right tools, so access to the right knowledge management systems, access to remote coaching and leadership support to help resolve customer queries and help with your people's development. I think also, if I was to be critical of contact centres, I think historically there's been too much focus when it comes to employee engagement on really superficial approaches, so ping pong tables, donuts, food huddles, and none of that is really applicable in this new world that we're living in. So really having to go back and engage with your teams, ask them, listen to them, help them be involved in shaping your new engagement activities and priorities so that they really feel part of that. But importantly, marry up with action and help people see some change on that front. Much as flexibility was raised as a key requirement for customers, I think it's a similar requirement for employees. And this isn't just about the option to work from home, but when they work. And I think in contact centres, that link between schedule flexibility and employee engagement has been really understated and underemphasised. But with the ability to work from home, we've been seeing agents being able to do hour shifts here, hour shifts there, not having to stick to the rigid structures that have previously prevailed in contact centre, which has a massive bearing on people's ability to manage their home life as well as be successful in their working environment. So I'd really encourage teams to look at how dynamic you're being, look at the option for micro shifts to be offered out, but also how are you encouraging that culture of autonomy where people are able to self-select the shift patterns that they're working for and they're able to sort of trade shifts with their colleagues. I saw a really interesting article published last week about Unilever, who've publicly come out and said there's not going to be a 5-day return to standard working weeks. They're going to be looking at various ways in which their employees can continue to work from home, but also looking at the wider notion of flexibility in terms of compressed working weeks, not working your typical Monday to Friday. So I think that's going to be a real trend that we see continue regardless of industry sector. And one of the final points I would draw out here is just around connectivity and collaboration. I think in the first phase of lockdown last year, there was a real sense of teams coming together, this sense of heroic recovery. But in the second phase, as COVID sort of lags on and drags on, I think it's to be expected that there's going to be a greater sense of anxiety. People's morale is potentially going to dip, and there's just going to be a general sort of sense of fatigue with the whole situation. So that's when it's super important that you're engaging with the individuals in your team on a one-to-one basis and creating the environment where they're able to talk about those concerns, but that you're also coming together as a team and supporting each other. And I think we've all become very adept, although my performance today maybe suggests otherwise, at using tools like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but look at how you can use them not to just problem solve and fix customer issues, but to really bring your teams together. And I think the final point on health and well-being is, as a leader, this also extends to your own health and well-being. So put on your own safety mask too, to ensure that you're there to best support your customers and your people. That sends out such a powerful role model message around the importance of self-care. So don't forget about yourself when you're considering how to best support people in your team. And the last few points I would cover off here, just around coaching skills. So the contact centre landscape has changed. Expectations and requirements from customers and people have changed. So how does your coaching model similarly need to adjust to be cognizant and respectful of this new backdrop that we're all living and working in? With teams no longer being in the one physical location, there's a real need for real-time performance analytics and insight to help provide that in-the-moment guidance on support and areas of real-time coaching during live customer interactions. But also consider how you're bringing on board your wider team and your wider resource. How do you include options like peer-to-peer coaching to really help people embed and engage new team members, but also existing team members who maybe just have some coaching requirements that wider members of the team can support with. And the final point I would touch on here is amplification of the voice of the customer. Despite all the pressures and challenges last year, I really think 2020 represented a coming of age for contact centres. No more poor relation, no more cost centre or overhead. When literally other frontline teams were having to shut up shop, teams were furloughed, the contact centre became that real stalwart for customer experience. People were quickly mobilised to work from home and therefore became that key lens into the customer experience, creating that real platform for contact centre leaders to share that customer insight, share that customer experience, and really bring that to life for the wider business. So I think 2021 continues to create an exciting opportunity for contact centres to really mobilise that and leverage that increased strategic significance I believe they now have within wider organisational structures. And I think that in turn creates an exciting opportunity to really elevate the role of the people within your team and create that platform for them to share their knowledge of the wider customer experience and help bring that to life. So for contact centre leaders moving into this year, it's about finding that right balance between being there for your people and your customers, but also how you face out into the wider business that you operate within. So I think with the changing customer and people expectations, new priorities to consider, it's really important to just reflect on how am I going to lead? How do I become the best, most effective contact center leader this year? I think 2020 showed like never before the real importance of situational leadership, that ability to really draw on different skills and different leadership traits dependent upon the people you're leading and the situation that you find yourself in, that ability to really dial up and dial down as required. I think leaders have typically led with head and hands. So lead with head, plan ahead, look at the big picture, make decisions, assess your risk, make calculations based on commercial return, etc. And lead with hands in terms of rolling up your sleeves, bringing people together and sort of demonstrating that focus on results and execution and delivery. But I think for me this year, in 2021, but also based on 2020 reflections, the concept of heart-centered leadership really gathered momentum, really had a light shone on it last year. And this really looks at leaders' ability to demonstrate, ability to build trust, rapport, exhibit personal vulnerability themselves. And the whole notion of pastoral support became so critical last year. And I think that's really going to continue as we move into 2021. But a new leadership dimension for me really existed, and I call that leading with your feet. And that really taps into the themes of resilience and agility, which I think were two key trends and buzzwords that emerged last year. And they're just going to be increasingly prominent as we move through this year. From an agility perspective, businesses and leaders and teams were really forced to pivot very quickly and change direction with very little warning. And I think as a leader, it's about not just being able to demonstrate agility yourself, but how you cultivate that agile environment within your team where people are comfortable moving across channels based on different customer demand. You're helping create environments where people are comfortable with ambiguity and they're actually really curious about new opportunities and developments. So I think that's a really key point to call out. The second point is resiliency. This is the ability to overcome and bounce back from stressful or difficult situations. Really interesting one for me. I've worked in many businesses where resiliency is cited as being a key leadership skill. There's not really any toolkit around how to be resilient and how to lead with resiliency. So I've got three key themes that I would just table with everyone today, which I hope would help. The first is around purpose. I think purpose is key in any role that you undertake. Looking at your shared team purpose and really homing in on the significance of each person within your team. I'm a firm believer that you get the best out of your people when people understand the significance of me and know that I matter, which comes from performance conversations, clear goals and objectives, culture of recognition, etc. So really reflect on how you bring that purpose to life at a team and individual level. The second one is support, and we've talked about the importance of collaboration and relationship building, particularly when people are working remotely. But how do you build that culture of support that's not wholly dependent on you? How do you create that culture within your team where your team are really leaning in and are looking out for one another? And I think where you're able to establish buddy systems, have the peer-to-peer coaching that we talked about before, I think all of that is really helpful. A problem shared is indeed a problem halved. And I think when you're able to empathize and share stories with people in your team who've walked a mile in your shoes, that can really help drive resiliency. And the final piece, and I guess would be one of the final takeouts for everyone today, is the concept of hope. I think as a leader, it's important you get that balance between being open and transparent and honest, but also providing direction and optimism for the future, something McKinsey are now referring to as bounded optimism. So I think that's going to be a really key skill set for leaders and contact centers to embrace as we move into 2021. So that brings me to the end of today's discussion. I'm going to be handing back to Charlie shortly. If anyone has anything that they want to pick up with me separately or share some particular questions or thoughts from their business perspective, I'd be really happy to engage, and my details are here and you'll have this in the slide deck that's circulated later. But thank you for listening, and I will pass back to Charlie now.
Excellent. Thank you, Victoria. There was lots of really, really great stuff there. I'd actually written down a few kind of key takeaways that I've taken away from that personally, which I'll share with everybody in a moment. But first things first, I want to get all of the viewers into the chat room to take part in the quiz that we're about to go to. So yeah, if you're not already in the chat room, if you could log in. to cch.chat just on your phone or another tab, something like that. Or if you fancy more of a challenge, there's always the www.courseuntitled.com/chat. So yeah, those of you who are already in the chat room, if you could just put also in 1 or 2 words there, what did you like best about Victoria's presentation? For me personally, there was lots of stuff. Your point around that previous understandings of the customer expectations and considering if those are still relevant, even though a lot of your key processes will be brought in that will be built upon those, I thought was very good, Victoria. The idea of kind of you talked about Unilever and having more compressed shift types. When I was speaking to somebody from Domestic and General's contact center, their most popular shift option was a 4-day week, but 37.5 hours just pushed into those 4 days. So I think that point was very interesting. It's something that I've definitely seen. I really loved the slide on the hands, head, feet and heart. I think there was lots of really great information there, and I would encourage everybody to look back through that just to make sure they see all the points there. That's really good. And kind of building a culture on purpose and support systems and things like that. I thought, yeah, lots of really key takeaways from my perspective there. But now you're all in the chat room, hopefully. We can move on to our quiz. If you could use the A, B, C, and G buttons at the bottom left-hand side of whatever screen that you're using, that would be excellent. And yeah, I will start going through that for everybody now. Just give everybody a couple of moments to come in. I see we have 103 people there, which is great. So let's start off today's quiz. So the first question that we have for you is true or false? Remote leaders and managers find hitting team goals just as easy as they did when working on site. And for all of you who may miss me at the beginning, say there is a prize in the form of a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates to the winner of this quiz. So well worth getting your votes in now. So yeah, I'll give everybody a couple more moments to put their responses into this. True or false? Remote leaders and managers find hitting team goals just as easy as they did when working on site. Yes, so we have most people getting that one right with false. And in fact, remote leaders and managers find hitting team goals almost twice as hard when compared to on-site managers, according to a Soapbox survey, which is a very interesting statistic. Our second question now, according to research, which is the biggest barrier that prevents leaders from running their dream contact center? Is it A, broken processes, B, budget, C, conflicting business priorities, or D, lack of technology integration? I think these are all some quite key issues in businesses. A couple that Tim mentioned right at the start of the webinar in there actually, which is interesting to see. But yeah, we'll give everyone a couple more moments to put their answers in. And yeah, let's see. Budget, yeah, quite a few of you getting that one right. But while budget was the biggest barrier for contact center leaders, each of the options presented were the top 4 barriers for contact center leaders. And I guess, as Victoria was stating, the challenges very much do depend on which contact center you're in and the sector that you're in. So we have Scott in the lead so far as we're halfway through our quiz. 2 more questions to come. And the third question is, what percentage of managers say that they didn't receive any management training? Is it A, 18%, B, 38%, C, 58%, or D, 78%? It's a very interesting one. I'll give everybody a couple more moments to select the percentage of people that they think do not receive any management training. And let's go on to see the answers now. And yeah, most people getting that one right, which is very promising to see. And this statistic came from MDA Training, who also report that 82% of employees don't trust their boss to tell the truth, which is it's quite a remarkable statistic. So Scott is still in the lead as we come to our last question, but it's a bit of a tricky one, so a lot of people here might still have a chance. And the question is, which author once said, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way? Is it A, Carol Dweck, B, Bill Bryson, C, John Maxwell, or D, Mark Twain? Okay, give everybody a couple more moments to put in their answers. Is it A, Carol Dweck, B. Bill Bryson, C. John C. Maxwell, or D. Mark Twain? Excellent. So the answer there was John C. Maxwell, and a lot of people getting that one right, which is again very encouraging to see. And another famous quote from John C. Maxwell is, "There are no shortcuts to any place worth going." So a lot of great wisdom to share at the end there. The winner today is Tim. Congratulations to you, Tim. You will win the bottle of champagne or box of chocolates once this webinar has come to the end, and we'll be in touch. So congratulations to you. And also we will be giving out a second bottle of champagne or box of chocolates to the winner of our winner's tip. So if you can continue to send in your top tips and questions to the chat room throughout today's webinar, that would be great. And we'll come to some of them now. So I don't know if Victoria and Tim could put your webcams back on, and I'll put some of these questions and tips to you now to gather your thoughts on them. The first one was from Emily, who says, "Ensure your team are having fun, as it can get lonely in lockdown. Fun equals higher morale and improved productivity. I tried bingo with my team, and I sent them all a bingo card to their home address. This went down very well." I think that's a nice, Tim. A nice point there. Thank you, Emily. So another tip now coming in from Claire, who says, it's so easy to give advice about mental health, but forget to follow your own advice. You get more buy-in by leading from example. I think that's a very interesting point. Would you go along with that, Victoria?
Yeah, I absolutely would. It's that whole adage of the airline example of put your own safety mask on first. So so important. And I think, you know, all the challenges I've touched on today that customers are facing and employees are facing, we are, as leaders, customers and employees ourselves. So we're absolutely facing into those difficulties ourselves, and it's important to just really take that time, not just to look after yourself, but I think, as I was saying earlier, it's really powerful role modeling behavior to really physically and visibly demonstrate the importance of self-care.
Yeah, I think I really like that idea of kind of putting on your own mask mask first. I think that's great. We'll come to a question now. For employee health and well-being, is there anything that you've been able to do to support anyone feeling isolated while at home? I think, Victoria, I'll quickly go to you again for this one. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I really do think that the mental health pandemic that's going to follow on the heels of the COVID pandemic is something we all need to be really watchful of, and really look out for the early warning signs for people in our teams. I think it's so important as a leader, regardless of what level of leader you are, that within your team you're checking in on people, not checking up. So I think in contact centres we have access to such a myriad of data and insight, but sometimes the only insight you need is the conversation with someone, just to ask how they are and just really look out for the warning signs. But also I think businesses are much more advanced now and mature in their understanding of the importance of things like employee assist programs. So often it's not about creating something from scratch, but just reminding people what is already available, how to access it, and helping sort of signpost some of the tools that are available for them. But for me, the simplest thing is just a phone call or even just a text, just to let people know you're thinking about them. And also just drawing on some of those opportunities within your team to look at the buddying options. Maybe there's people in your team that are coping admirably and maybe are not on their own, that can really offer some of that help and support to other people. So it's just about really looking out for people and being there for each other.
I think that's very interesting. I like the idea that you said of checking in, not checking up on your team. I think lots of very valuable stuff there. We'll just rattle off a couple more. One tip now from Alexandra, who says we have weekly team meetings where we catch up on both work and non-work related things. We also catch up on team get-togethers a few times a month where we hang out and play games, have competitions and quizzes. It's really good for people that live alone during lockdown as well, to get more social interaction outside of work. Another tip now from David, saying that for employee engagement, use informal end of the day chats, more non-work related. I think that's an interesting tip. Do you have any kind of thoughts as well on this whole theme of employee engagement and well-being, Tim?
I do. I mean, a couple of things. Obviously, I agree with everything that Victoria said, and I think the fun thing is really important because, particularly during the pandemic, when we've all been working from home and sitting in front of Zoom screens or whatever all day, it can just be work, work, work. So absolutely get some fun back in there. And then, as a contact center, manager or supervisor or leader, I'd really advocate, catching people doing things right. Because we do tend to, worldwide have a culture, management culture of, trying to find out when people are doing things wrong, but yeah, catch them doing something right, and that'll make people a little happier, I think.
Yeah, I really like the idea of catching people doing things right. I think that's a really good time now as well to pass over to you, Tim, and I'll let you get on with your presentation. So I'll stop sharing my screen and allow you to do that.
Great, thanks. Okay. Is that coming up okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, and just let me
screen
get my mouse over there to go full screen.
Perfect.
Excellent, and back here. Right, okay, so anyone who missed me at the beginning, I'm Tim Kimber, working product marketing at Vonage. Got a long history in running contact centers, setting them up, and more recently doing the product marketing for contact centers for Vonage and previously other sort of tech and communications companies. So let's get straight into it. This presentation is primarily going to be about, one second, let me just move this on my screen, that's better. It's going to be based on Vonage's annual Global Customer Experience Survey, where in 2020, we surveyed customers twice, both before the pandemic and after the pandemic, to uncover any changes that resulted from the pandemic. As you can see on the slide, one of the things that took off, as you might expect, was video as a communications channel. And as a result, voice and SMS or text messages, for those not in North America, took a bit of a dip. And we'll be drilling into this further in the coming slides. So if your 2021 goal is to improve Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction, average handle time, or first call resolution, or if indeed true customer experience management is a priority for your contact center, then this report is for you. And I've put a link there at the bottom of the slide where you can download the full report. It's a PDF that you can just download. And I believe it's also going to be put in the chat. So if you want to get a copy of that, it's in the chat and you can download that straight away. Okay, my slide's not moving on now. Here we go. So thinking about Omnichannel, I spoke about Omnichannel a little bit earlier on. If you consider the most popular ways for customers to make contact these days, mobile phone calls are still the most favorite way to connect with a business. But 70% of customers in our report show a range of preferences from other communication channels as well. So voice calls are still the preferred way to contact a business, but focusing only on their top choice misses the key benefit of omnichannel customer engagement. Those second and third choices reveal a broad range of favored methods, everything from video chat to chatbots and even push notifications. So all the different communication methods in people's top 3 choices show that customers are willing to use the available communication method, even if they prefer a different one. The key takeaway? Only offering voice in your contact center just won't cut it in what's going to become the new normal. So we know the headline news in the report is that voice is still the biggest communication channel and the clear preference within the contact center. But to really satisfy your customers, offering the right secondary and tertiary channels is key. That's where the data in the report can help contact center leaders figure out the right other channels. So here you have the rules of the game for delivering exceptional customer experiences. First of all, we need to take account of differing levels of complexity and urgency and the proliferation of different communication channels. Then secondly, how your contact center then manages these factors could be the difference between winning a customer's loyalty or potentially losing them forever. And then lastly, from simple inquiries to complex ones that push your agents and your resources to their limits, you win the customer experience game one well-orchestrated interaction at a time. So we're going to have a little poll now. Yeah, without a doubt, 2020 really was the year of video for all of us. Let's just take a few moments for you to let us know if you see a role for video in your contact center. So Charlie, can you put the poll up, please?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll quickly read out the options for everybody there as they take part. So the question is, do your contact center agents use video as one of their channels? Is it yes, we already use video in our contact center? Not yet, but considering video, or no plans for video. I don't know, Tim, if you have any kind of thoughts on what might come up here.
It's probably going to be a cross between the first two, I'd have thought. We know some of our customers are already using videos, but a lot of them are considering it because what's going to happen in future. We're not going to go back to the old ways of working. There's definitely been a lot more remote agents, and even some contact centers going completely virtual. So that would be my expectation, but really interested to see the results.
Yeah, let's end the polling and share the results for everybody on the screen. So yeah, there is indeed a lot more people considering the technology than what currently have it. In terms of 22% considering, 17% considering, 61% though, most is coming up for no plan. So yeah,
wow, okay.
big variation across there.
Yeah,
But
really
yeah, I
interesting.
will stop sharing and let you carry on, Tim.
Great. I need to you close that. Okay, excellent. Okay. So if we look at some of the channels now, while offering those multiple channels is absolutely vital, we need to make sure we're choosing the right channels. And for that, you need to think about your customer needs. What types of interactions do your agents usually have, and how time sensitive are they? So are they service issues that require some sort of immediate response? In this case, if your phone lines are busy, chat or messaging are probably better secondary channels to offer than something like email. Does your contact center get a lot of simple inquiries? Then a chatbot that can help with self-service might be the way to go. And in fact, we found that customers do continue to warm to AI or artificial intelligence, preferring chatbots 1.5 times more in August 2020 than they did prior to the first wave of the pandemic. So that's a pretty significant increase. So to really win at customer experience in 2021, you need to be thoughtful about the channels you offer and indeed when you offer them. So in the research, we asked customers how they prefer to connect or to be contacted for a range of scenarios. And those various scenarios fall neatly into this 2x2 matrix of urgency versus complexity. So first of all, for quick and simple information, voice calls are preferred, and SMS and social messaging apps, things like WhatsApp, Facebook messaging, follow closely behind. And to me, that makes complete sense. That no major surprises there. When there's a need to speak to someone urgently, voice calls absolutely stand out as being the preferred choice by a long way. But SMS and social messaging apps can still be used in that scenario. Now, when delivering a live status update, an SMS message is the preferred channel, followed by voice and social messaging apps. And then for complex problems or potentially, customer complaints, voice calls have that strong preference, with social messaging and video coming in as the next preference. Then when discussing sensitive or personal information, the voice call prevails again, with SMS and social messaging the next in line as choices. And lastly, for the most personalized experiences, voice calls come up on top with video and SMS following behind them. So you can see that complexity and urgency have a heavy influence on channel choice. Note that while voice often remains the top preference, we've seen that during 2020, preferences for other channels have in fact increased. And we know people are increasingly willing to use other channels when a live agent isn't available by phone. And we expect that trend to continue into 2021 and beyond. So if we look now at some of the different industries and sectors that you might all work in. First of all, for financial services, we see here in this graph that voice is the most popular choice for communicating with someone like a financial advisor. Video and SMS gain in popularity for things like online mortgage and loan applications, and SMS and other messaging gains traction for account updates and even more so for answering those very basic questions. In the healthcare industry, voice dominates for consulting with a doctor or therapist, as we might expect. But SMS and text messaging, SMS and messaging gains popularity for things like appointments and updates, which we've probably all experienced. And videos becomes more popular for describing non-emergency conditions. And I can only speak from my own experience in the UK, but certainly our doctors' surgeries here, they've all been using voice for a while. They're all now doing SMS updates and that sort of thing. And video consultations are becoming, really quite common, even within the NHS. So that's definitely sort of panning out in the UK and I suspect all around the world. And then lastly, for retail, there's not much to choose between the channels when shopping with the help of something like a retail advisor, but SMS and messaging are clearly popular for order and delivery updates. And again, we've probably all experienced that, placing our orders with Amazon and other sort of online services, particularly over the Christmas period. And voice is a preference for getting answers to those more straightforward questions in the retail world. So we can see here there are some key differences by industry sector that the contact center leader needs to take into account when designing their communication channels for customers to make contact with. So a little plug here for Vonage. I mean, Vonage has a cloud contact center solution that empowers agents by facilitating flexible and remote working. Because it's in the cloud, all of our customers were able to very quickly move their agents to sort of home working and remote offices. And we keep them in the CRM desktop to avoid juggling between multiple screens. It's a major complaint in contact centers that the agents don't want to have to keep jumping into different screens. We want them really living in the CRM and adding in our contact center functionality around that. Now, other user-friendly features that we have in the contact center include things like all the voice controls and a little contact pad widget, click to dial, screen pops, voicemail drop, auto-logging calls and recording, and much more. And as you might expect, we are also introducing video to our contact center solution as a result of customers telling us they want that there. And we saw that in the poll that there definitely is some demand out there. And with video in the contact center, the supervisor will be able to control which agents have access to video. It'll be available as a single click that the agent can offer to their customers for both service and sales scenarios. We see it on both sides of the fence there. And it's going to be seamlessly integrated into both the contact center and the CRM, with all interactions automatically logged for training and reporting purposes, just like any other communications channel. So we do expect it to become generically part of the Omnichannel solution in future. So Vonage really believes that video in the contact center is here to stay, and we're bringing this out in the next month or so for some of our kind of early adopter customers, and we expect it to gain traction over the coming months and years. So on that topic, let's do another quick poll. We saw in 2020 that contact centers have started to quickly pivot to remote and home working as a result of the pandemic. It would be great to get a better understanding of what happens next. Is that the new normal, or are agents going to go back to working in a central location? So Charlie, could you pop up the next poll, please?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So the next poll that we have for everybody, as Tim introduced there, is will your contact center agents permanently work remotely from home? So the options are all of our agents will work remotely. We will use a hybrid contact center model. We plan to move everybody back to our brick and mortar contact center, or we are not sure yet. Be interesting to see the results of this one for sure. I see that we have a lot of votes in already, so I will end the polling for everybody and share the results. So yeah, the most common option, which over 53% of respondents says, was we'll use a hybrid contact center model, and then an equal 10% saying that all agents will work remotely and all will go back to a brick and mortar contact center, which is quite interesting, and a lot of people who are not yet sure. Is that kind of what you're expecting there, Tim?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have got some customers who've actually, closed their brick and mortar premises and have no intention of ever opening it again. But it is a relatively small percentage, and we've got some who say they're going back to bricks and mortars as soon as they possibly can. And that varies by industry and different types of company. But the vast majority say there is definitely some permanent change, and they have some sort of hybrid model, because not only is it good for the company in that they probably don't need as much bricks and mortar going forward, but also for agents, you've got more flexibility. You can actually extend your hiring pool. They don't have to live within an easy commute of the contact center offices. You can, in theory, hire anywhere in the world. So I think we're going to see that hybrid model absolutely prevail over the coming months, definitely.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll pass back over to you now to carry on with your presentation.
Thanks very much. Okay. So when engaging with businesses and service providers, customers the world over told us they're frustrated by two major, what we might call customer experience gaffes. The first one is when they have to repeat themselves to different people, and we've probably all had the experience calling into, banks and insurance companies and that sort of thing. You give all your details over, your account number, your name and address, your date of birth, everything else they want, and you get passed to another agent or someone else in the business. You have to give all the same information over again. So that is something that customers absolutely detest, and a big one to focus on. And then secondly, when they call in, there's no one available on the phone, so the queue times might be getting unacceptable, but there are no other channels available to get help. So there isn't the option of chat. There isn't the option to, go to social media. There isn't the option to even send an email. It's just, sorry, you've got to wait. And that really riles customers as well. So these are the top two things globally that consistently came out in every region of the world as being the major gripes. Now, if we look a little bit further, after those two frustrations, we do start to see some regional variations further down in the customer selections, getting to slightly smaller percentages here. When there aren't enough options to contact the business that suits my needs at the time, when I receive a message update but I can't reply directly, these sort of things are also important. But if you're not addressing those first two issues, these other ones become far less important. And indeed, PricewaterhouseCoopers have done a lot of research in this. They had their Future of Customer Experience study, where they found that a third of customers who love your brand will leave after just one bad experience. And after several frustrating interactions, the abandonment rate will jump up to 92%. So putting some focus on addressing the major gripes should be a top priority. And then you'll see in the report, by region, what all the other gripes are, and you can go after those as well. So yeah, really important here to focus on those top two things. So I'll now close this part of the presentation by saying that exceptional customer experience can only be delivered if you fully understand the timing, the communication channels, and the customer scenarios. And with that, I'll thank you for your time listening today, and I'll hand back to Charlie.
Sorry, quickly turn myself I'll back off on mute. Yeah, lots of really great stuff, Tim. And again, I have lots of key takeaways for everybody in the audience. But first, I have a poll, the final poll question of today, just for everybody. And that is simply, would you like to see a demonstration of the Vonage solutions that kind of Tim alluded to in his presentation? But yeah, lots of great stuff. I think the couple of key points for me is, are you considering the complexity and the urgency of the issues that come in across different channels, and considering that in your channel strategy? Thought that was very interesting. Only happy agents, of course, can deliver a great customer experience. And the kind of a couple of slides from the end, you kind of showed those customer experience gaps, and I thought that was a very interesting insight, and see the kind of very common challenges that contact centers are facing, such as having to repeat yourself multiple times. So yeah, lots of really great stuff. Really great stuff there. But now let's just go back to quickly end today's webinar by looking at a few of your top tips and questions from the chat room. And we have a question in first from Karen, who said, just wonder what Tim feels about live advisors on a live chat and social media interface. I don't know, Tim, you want to take this one on?
Okay, I mean, a lot of our customers do use that, and it's increasingly being used, particularly since the pandemic. We do quite a lot of work with Salesforce, so our contact center solution integrates very tightly with Salesforce. They have their own live chat solution, which works very nicely. But I think what Karen's talking about here is a separate application that perhaps I think from what I saw in the chat, that Karen even supplies. And there are a lot of applications out there that customers are using. So sometimes they want it part of the contact center, part of the CRM, but there are add-ons as well, and those are perfectly adequate in most circumstances too. So yeah, the important thing is to better offer those extra channels. How you do it is really down to your sort of IT department and how they want to actually deploy the thing.
Yeah, excellent. Very interesting responses. Yeah, so we've got a tip now from Tops, who says, be flexible with agents and staff. They're human. Get more out of them than if just process driven. I think that's a very nice tip. Another tip now coming in says, we found engaging in more frequent ice-breaking type activities or games while on web cameras has helped with engagement. Two truths and a lie is a popular one that allows agents to share a bit about themselves. it's nice for agents to be able to put faces to voices and names. I think that's a nice one. But we have another question now in for our panelists. And thinking on how to implement a 4-day week. I think this goes back to our conversation earlier, Victoria. So I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts on how contact centers can practically implement such a big shift change as this.
Yeah, well, I think the whole advent of home working has really sort of accelerated the whole sort of understanding and concept of flexible working within contact centers. So I think first of all, it's looking to establish if there's actually an appetite with your people before you actually set off down this track. And if you're doing all the engagement, speaking to your employees, etc., you should be able to quickly establish if there is that appetite, and then working really closely with your planning and scheduling teams to understand how that might work. Are there particular channels where it's going to work most effectively on? So first of all, get the appetite from your teams, and then stay really closely engaged with your planning and scheduling teams to understand what the different options are then, and perhaps just look at doing something on a small scale, maybe just to prove the concept and show how that can work, get feedback from the business, feedback from your people that have been involved in the pilot, and then look at what you need to consider from a further perspective to scale it and do it at large.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the kind of very first point of understanding the preference of your own team is very important. Is very important for that. So yeah, really great stuff. Just going to read through a couple more tips to close today's webinar. This one comes in from Karen, who says, "Tip that I tell our agents is to treat every customer with kid gloves, because everyone has their own personal issues that they're dealing with." That's an interesting one. And we have another tip in from Joe, who says, "We have daily stand-ups, stand-downs, and lots of events socially, such as quizzes and escape rooms, etc. We have also changed the format of our one-to-ones, and they're spending increased time during one-to-ones." I think that's a actually, let's have one more. I've changed my mind. Let's have another one in from Karen, who says, "Know your team or direct reports outside of work, especially people who may have families and other commitments to deal with. Helps you to understand if they need flexibility with their work-life balance." I think that's a very nice one now to end today's webinar. But if there's just the first few things that you can do before logging off today, if you could just let us know in 1 or 2 words in the chat room what you like best about the webinar. And of course, I haven't forgotten about it. It's time for the winning tip, that bottle of champagne or box of chocolates. And today that goes to Paul, who says, "A tip from me would be that ambiguity is the enemy of high performance." So the message is to give clear targets to create that results focused culture. I think that's a very good point there, actually, in setting clear expectations to the team. I think that's very good point from Paul. So congratulations, and we'll be in touch shortly after the webinar. And yeah, again, always getting feedback, aren't we? But if you could please complete the survey when you leave the webinar, just please fill in our post-webinar survey, only 4 questions long. And yeah, if you want to catch up on any of today's webinar, the replay is available, and so are the slides at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. But that's it from today. Just a chance for me to thank both of our speakers for presenting today. So first of all, thanks Victoria for joining.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being part of the conversation.
Excellent. It's great to have you on, as it was to have you on as well, Tim. So thanks for being presenting today.
Thank you very much, Charlie, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Great stuff. And yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, so we'll see you then. Thanks everybody for watching, and see you soon. Bye.